So first of all, thank you very much to Jerry Fahey for inviting me to come and speak here today. Jerry and I go back, I'm not going to say the amount of years, Jerry, don't worry, but let's say it's quite a long time. And it's great to see new colleagues here like Christine as well. And I'm just very happy to have a chance to talk about stuff that I love. So, as Gráinne said, I work in education. I'm a full-time professor, lecturer. I teach and I research actively. And just complete disclosure here, I use AI tools extensively. So I'm a complete advocate of AI. I think this is going to be something that we're all going to have to deal with at some stage in the future. And I think that it really is absolutely revolutionary. And I'm going to try to talk a little bit about that today. Unfortunately, we don't have like all day to talk about it, so I have to be brief. But I'll bring you maybe on a little journey with me. So if we look at these guys here, some of you might know who that is. Does anybody know who that is? Do we have any mountain climbers in the audience? Who is it? Yeah, it's Edmund Hillary and Tenzing Norgay. And those two guys were the first to climb Everest. So you can see the equipment that they have is fairly basic. It's 100 years ago, thereabouts, compared to maybe what we might have today. And this is a little bit like the way I view AI. I think that we really have incredible tools which allow us to work much more effectively. They allow us to do things that perhaps we couldn't do if we didn't have those tools. I don't think these guys are mountain climbers, so you can't just put this equipment on somebody who's never climbed a mountain and expect them to do that. That's not realistic. A little bit like you can't give these AI tools to somebody who doesn't know how to teach or doesn't know how to research and expect them to be an expert in those areas. It's not going to happen. But what it does do is it enhances performance. And it really allows these guys here maybe to be able to do something that they couldn't quite do, or be able to do it a little bit quicker or a little bit more effectively. And that's an example of how I use AI tools. I have to apologize to Christine. She's seen a lot of this before in a different presentation. But a few months ago, I was at a conference in South Africa. And about a week before the conference, a week before we were on the airplane, the organizers contacted us. And I had a paper in the conference. And they said, we're changing the referencing system on your paper. So that's not really what you want to hear. It's not the biggest deal in the world, but it's like 4 or 5 hours of work, probably. And that was our paper. I work in, my main area of research is technology for sustainable development, so we wrote a paper on that. And all the references had to change, and I think there was about 90 references in the paper. So it was down to me to change. I'm still not sure why I got lumbered at that job, but I did. And we had to change that. So I was thinking, okay, there's an afternoon gone. But hold on. Maybe I can get AI to help me with this. So the style was a pretty obscure style, which I hadn't really used before. And the typical default pieces of technology I would use to manage references would be EndNote and Zotero. But neither of them had that particular style for whatever reason. So this was one of the papers I wanted to reference. It's a different paper that I wrote a few years ago on something different. And this was one of the papers that was going to be in, that had to change style. So I thought, okay, maybe I'll just ask ChatGPT, can it do this for me? And lo and behold, it could. All I had to do was put in the name of the paper. I didn't have to put in anything more than that. And you can see at the top there, I just put in the title, and I asked it to format it in this obscure style, and it did. So this is the correct, it's the perfect format. It's absolutely correct. So I thought, brilliant. That saved me a few minutes. Now I just have 98 more to go. But then I thought, I wonder, can it do a little bit more than this? So I asked it, if I just dropped the paper in, could it handle the entire reformatting job to the format I wanted? And to my great relief, it did. And it got everything right. Just drop the paper in, and it can reference everything. Now, that's a big deal. That saved me a whole afternoon's work, which means I could go and do something else. I probably didn't do anything very productive, but it saved me from having to do that grind work that really isn't of interest to anybody. So this is the potential. This is the thing. How can we tap into this? How can we use this? Is that even ethical? Maybe some people are thinking. Should we even be doing this? Did the conference allow that? Yeah, the conference was fine with that. There's no problem with that. I did manually check every reference, which took a bit of time, but they were all correct as far as I could see. And that is something that I would consider quite a big deal. Now, I've worked quite hard on this over the last number of years because I do use AI quite a bit in everything that I do. All of my research, all of my teaching, everything. And I break it down like this. This always changes. This didn't format perfectly. I apologize for that, but we can perhaps circulate the slides later. So I use ChatGPT and Claude extensively just for research purposes to talk back and forward. So, I mean, maybe I'm a bit sad, perhaps, but I tend to have ongoing conversations with these two AI engines. My wife thinks I'm nuts, but I do. And it's a little bit like, to me, having the smartest person in the world right beside you, and you can just talk back and forward. Ideas, research gaps, different ways of doing things. I had a great conversation with these two engines about AI and accountancy over the last week, because even though my primary degree is in accountancy, debits and credits, I still have to think which is which. So that was fantastic. For literature reviews, I used 3 bits of software: Litmaps, ResearchRabbit, and Connected Papers. Again, absolutely revolutionary, game changer. For me, the kind of stuff that would have taken weeks now literally takes a day or less. And it's more effective. And this is the thing. I mean, it's absolutely unbelievable. For research gaps and for really interrogating different kinds of literature and research fields, I tend to use software called Elicit, and I also use a piece of software called Cite. All of these have free tiers, but they also have paid tiers as well. And I tend to just jump in and out of subscriptions when I need them, but I usually keep a subscription to ChatGPT 4.0. For formulating research questions and for abstracts and that kind of thing, again, Elicit, and I've been using Google Notebook LM extensively lately. That's an incredible piece of software. If you drop in 5, 6 different pieces of paper or articles, maybe some of the stuff that's issued by Chartered Accountants Ireland, for example, you can interrogate just that individual document. And it allows you to just ask questions within the scope of that document by itself. And again, it's just incredibly powerful stuff if you know how to use this. And then for data analysis, which I'm going to talk about a little bit now in a minute, I use Julius. And I'm going to show you some screen grabs from Julius in a second. And this indeed is Julius. So this is definitely the most revolutionary part of AI. This is just absolutely mind-blowing to me. And it's the difference between months of data analysis and days of data analysis. I don't really do a huge amount of quantitative research anymore, but Julius excels at that. So for example, if we were to have a spreadsheet of, I apologize, the text is a little bit small on that, but that's like a heat map showing analysis of different figures in a spreadsheet that you can probably barely see at the top that was just dropped in. The software produces that analysis. Now, that would take a long time to produce manually. You could do it, and if you were handy at Excel, you could probably produce something quite similar, but this is instantaneous. It does it straight away. And students are going to use this. There's absolutely no doubt about that. Students are already using it. And I think the thing about, I'm going to talk about frameworks in a minute, but I think the thing about frameworks that have been issued by bodies like Chartered Accountants Ireland, like Trinity, like TU Dublin, it's always a little bit behind because the tech is just moving so fast. Every day, there seems to be a new piece of AI that does something shiny and that distracts me for an afternoon. It's progressing very, very, very quickly, and bodies like Chartered Accountants Ireland, like Trinity, like TU Dublin, are a little bit behind, I would suggest. Here's another example of Julius data analysis. So there's a spreadsheet. Again, I apologize for the small text, but again, we can hopefully make the slides available to anyone who wants them. This is a text, or this is a spreadsheet that somebody has collected doing research on calories and height and weight and that kind of thing. And again, just drop the spreadsheet in, and the system does detailed analysis on that. I worked a good bit over the summer just messing around with this data that I had that had been analyzed manually. And I was just playing around with different bits of software to see if it could do analysis that was accurate or if it was just producing any old kind of rubbish at all. It's 100% accurate. It does a very, very, very good job. I couldn't find one error. There might be differences in opinion, the way I would maybe do something and the way this does it, but it's correct all the time. The paid version works. Another example, another screen grab. It can do, it can spot things like outliers in data. It can do lots and lots of different advanced kind of things that I don't really know about, like ANOVA analysis. Maybe somebody knows what that is. I'm not sure what that is, but it can do it, and it does it correctly. All of this stuff that I've long since forgotten about F statistics and all these other things that I don't really work with on a day-to-day basis. And it's just really, really, really impressive. So as somebody who supervises research on multiple PhD students and postdocs, this is hard work. It takes weeks, it takes months. I've had multiple people coming up to me saying, I'm planning to do data analysis over the summer. It's going to eat up June, July, August. This does it in a day. So people are going to use it. It's as simple as that. The whole issue of de-skilling is probably one that you're thinking about. So if I did my PhD the hard way, I didn't have any of this available to me, so I know how to do this, and I understand how to do it. So are the next generation of students that we graduate, chartered accountants, some of my PhD students, are they going to know how to do this but be de-skilled? Yeah, they will, definitely. So I think that that's something we're going to have to deal with. The days of teaching people how to do this manually are still here, and there still is great value in that. But practically speaking, I mean, you're the guys with the coats and the old goggles trying to climb Everest. You really are. So there definitely is a broader discussion to be had, and there's just another example of much, much, much more detailed analysis. The other thing that's really cool about this particular bit of software is it can do the analysis, then it can write the report. Now, I would never accept somebody just writing a report with AI and just copying and pasting it and dropping it in and saying, that's my report. I would never accept that, as I don't think anyone here would either. But it gives you something to work with. So looking at a blank piece of paper is always quite difficult. But if you have a draft report, or if you have some ideas about something, then I think it's much easier to actually build on that. And you can build to the extent that the report is actually your report. You just get structures, you just get ideas, and at that point, it's not plagiarism. So yeah, we are probably moving towards a situation where students won't know how to do this manually. But the question is, do they need to? We've always done this. 100 years ago, Guinness employed the most amount of blacksmiths and coopers in the entire country. Trucks made them, and aluminium barrels made them redundant overnight. So it's a nice skill to know how to look after a horse. But I didn't ride a horse here this morning. I drove a car. So do I need to know that skill? No. Would it be nice to know it? Yeah, it would be. I'd love to know how to look after a horse, but I don't need to do it. This kind of approach can also do some serious analysis on qualitative data. So a lot of the data I tend to work with is interviews. And that's the kind of thing that I try to analyze. It's very expensive to try to transcribe these interviews, especially if they're in a different language. And trying to do some sort of thematic analysis on this to produce academic writing is a pretty big job. So I took some data I had. It was 25 hour-long interviews, which were in a different, obscure African language. At the time, it took 3 months to transcribe and translate those interviews. It takes a long time to actually transcribe an interview for those of you who have done it. It was extremely expensive. There was translators, there was people who had to transcribe this, and it was very, very, very hard work. Like when I was in the middle of that research, I was definitely looking at 18-hour days. It was very, very, very intensive work. So I was interested over the summer to see what kind of a job ChatGPT would do on this. So I just said to it, can you carry a thematic analysis? And I didn't have 25, I just wanted it to do 5. 5 interviews, which are each 1 hour long. And it said, yes, it can. It can do the thematic analysis. And then it listed off a big amount of detail about exactly how it was going to do this. So I said, oh, that looks okay. Let's try it. So I tried it, and it worked. Hour-long interview. It transcribed it. Now, this is an obscure African language, one that doesn't even have characters for some of the words we would use. And it did a perfect job. I have no idea how it did it, but it did a perfect job, because I compared it side by side with the manual transcriptions. It was 95% perfect. Then it did a thematic analysis with a piece of software called In Vivo, which is the standard for people like me to do that kind of work. And again, it just did it. It was absolutely perfect. I was stunned. I really didn't appreciate the power of this thing and the potential that it's going to have to revolutionize every single thing that everybody in this room does, particularly Mr. Fahy there, probably. This is an absolute game changer. There has never been anything like this. And if you can find a way, if I just jump back for a minute, sorry now, I hate jumping back like this. But if you can find a way to be aware of the kind of tools that are available, and to be able to work to try to figure out how to combine these tools, how to bake your AI cake, in a way, I suppose, and build them into your workflow, suddenly you become very, 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 very powerful. Now, how has this affected me practically? Well, I teach and I write academic papers for a living. Typically, it would take about 3 months manually to write a paper. That would be, it's hard work for any of you who have done it. Collaboration, a lot of different data analysis, a lot of different thematic analysis, all that kind of stuff. So it used to take about 3 months. Now it takes about 2 weeks for better papers that are much better. That reference literature I would never find manually. That use all kinds of thematic analysis that would be incredibly expensive and incredibly difficult to do. This is just unbelievable. Now again, you would have to ask the question at this point, is this ethical? And is this something that you should do? Or are we just de-skilling the whole next generation of our students? And that will be for another talk, I think. Usually if I do a talk like this, I have a mentee and I get people to sort of vote whether it's ethical or not. And it's always 50-50. It's always split right down the middle. I'm sure it would be here again this morning. And I mean, whether it is or not, in a way, this doesn't really matter, actually. We can say, oh, it's unethical, or yeah, it's ethical, and we can talk about that all day. But you know what? It doesn't matter, because people like me are going to use this. I've got a significant advantage. You have to compete with me now. And I'm able to do this. I'm able to write high-ranking academic papers in about 2 weeks, and I do it. You've got to compete with me. So as long as it doesn't break any of the rules of the journals, it doesn't currently. Now, again, presuming that you're just not getting the system to generate it, then you copy and paste and drop it in. You can't do that, obviously. But as long as you're working out structures, you're working out literature reviews and how they would fit in and defining research gaps and trying to do all of that kind of stuff, this is perfectly fine. The universities don't have a problem with it. The academic papers don't have a problem with it. And I'm sure that chartered accountants probably don't have a problem with it either. So, is my use of AI ethical? Again, we could have a whole other, never mind a talk about that. We could spend a whole day on that with expert speakers all over the place. But in a way, it's a bit of a redundant question, because it doesn't matter. People are going to use it, and unless it's specifically prohibited, I think it's going to gain wide usage over the next number of months as soon as people cop onto the power of this thing. I want to finish up in the next 2 minutes. I'm not sure how my timing is. Am I okay, or am I good? Okay, I'll just take a few more minutes. So how are institutions dealing with this? Well, as I said a minute ago, they're behind the curve. From my own experience, this is moving very, very, very fast. And I probably have a little bit of an advantage at the moment because I'm slightly ahead of the curve. But a lot of my colleagues wouldn't be really using this kind of stuff. So this is Trinity's position on the use of AI in research. And they have rules for using generative artificial intelligence, which I would have put up there, but it's behind a staff login, so I thought I'd better not do that. But it doesn't really say very much. It's a very brief document, and it just says beware of data privacy issues and beware of a few other little bits and pieces. It's pretty brief. It certainly doesn't go into the minutiae of what specific thematic analysis you can do on a semi-structured interview that you recorded in Sierra Leone about health workers. It doesn't say anything about that because it simply probably doesn't even know about that. I came across an interesting piece of writing from the World Economic Forum, which may be of interest. And this is about AI in education. So kids need AI guidance in school, but who guides the schools? So, I mean, your kids are going to be using this stuff. My son last night, or the night before, I think, he was looking at a maths problem. And he was asking me, how do you do the, because I like maths, and he was asking me, how do you do this? I was helping him, but this one I didn't know. It was something that I was thinking, wow, I actually don't know how to do that. So he took out his phone without even thinking. He took out his phone, opened up ChatGPT, took a picture of the page, the whole page. He said to ChatGPT, look at question 7 and give me a worked solution at junior cert level. The power of this is absolutely incredible. It's absolutely incredible. There is no way that this is not going to significantly reconfigure the work that everybody in this room does over the next 6 to 12 to 18 months. It just depends on how quick you are to adopt it. Your kids are going to adopt it. They probably have it already, that you mightn't even know about. There's AI built into things like Snapchat and all of these other different kinds of things that I know absolutely nothing about because I'm too old. But it's in there, and they're using it. So this is interesting. And I currently have a project on, which I can talk about to anyone who's interested, maybe at coffee, about putting in place training programs and interesting initiatives within primary schools for the use of AI, which is an SFI-funded program. The World Economic Forum also gave these 7 principles for AI in education. And again, I think Jerry is probably going to be quite interested in this. So they break it down. I won't walk through all of those, but they sort of do make sense when you think about this. And I think that anyone who's working in education or interested in education really, really needs to be aware of what's happening and perhaps aware of best practice in this area from organizations like the World Economic Forum. We can't leave out Chartered Accountants Ireland, right? Seeing as I'm in the building. So where does this particular body stand with AI? I don't know, is the honest answer. But I think, again, maybe with the greatest respect to everybody in the room, a little bit behind the curve. There was an interesting article on the website, which I just looked at earlier, I think over the weekend or last week or whenever, which is from August of 2024, where there were 3 experts discussing governance and AI and education and how this is going to compare, or how this is going to change maybe some of the ways we work. But I felt it was a little bit broad and non-specific. For somebody who's actually at the coalface of this and using these tools every single day, it didn't perhaps get to the nub of exactly how an organization like Chartered Accountants is going to deal with this. And that's going to be tricky. Your colleagues in England and Wales have been thinking about this as well, and they give practical guidelines, 5 of them, for use of AI in the accounting profession. So get your data in order. Again, these are sort of obvious. Think ahead about regulation, of which there is very little. Upskill staff. But again, how do you do that? Perhaps there's a huge gap in the market to provide skills in the use of AI. Perhaps I could make my fortune teaching people how to use these systems and showing you how I do it, maybe. Be mindful of ethics. But again, that's a really tricky one. What is ethics is the difference between right and wrong, but how do you know that? Or what is right and what is wrong? Do you just apply to the university guidelines, or do you do what you think is right yourself? It's an absolute minefield. And people will be driven by success. They're not going to care too much what's right and wrong. If somebody can do 3 months' work over the course of a weekend, they are going to do it. 100% guaranteed. Someone is not going to be thinking, I wonder if I should do that 3 months' work because I have a slight doubt about the ethical principles of this thing. Of course they're not going to do it. They're going to do the quick and easy way, especially if it gives you the exact same results. And then innovate with new services, of which there are many, and they're very frequently appearing. I'm almost finished. So there's also some guidance from IFAC. Again, I've linked this. They're talking about AI's impact on accountancy education, and they give a student's perspective. which I think is interesting. There definitely is the concern of data privacy and security, because when you use these systems, you feed data into a large language model. So effectively, you're giving your data to the model to allow it to be even smarter. So there is that issue, and I think that's one that's going to be tricky for the accounting profession. And I also thought this was sort of interesting here as well. This is AI's impact on accounting education. Again, the same article, but further down. And I'll just read the highlighted bit. AI's impact on students in accountancy education is profound. And it is. I absolutely 100% believe that. Offering the possibility of personalized learning. This is the gap for the educators in the room. So this is a huge possibility, and I think it's going to be very, very attractive to accountants. Personalized learning. And instant feedback, which again, when I did exams back in the day, you had to wait for months for results. I would have loved if somebody, just coming out of the exam, somebody had said you passed or you failed or whatever. Hopefully you passed. Which enhanced both efficiency and effectiveness in the learning process. There's the gap. There's the gap. This is what you guys need to be looking at if you're in education. This is it. You have a chance now to be the leader in the field here. If you don't do it, somebody else will come along and do it instead of you. Now, I'm going to finish on this. There's a lot of people who are writing about this kind of stuff right now, but there's less specifically in the accounting field. But this one paper, I would strongly encourage you to take a look at, if you can get access to it. So if you want to take a picture of that, now is the time to take a picture of that. I should have probably put a QR code to link it, but I just forgot. This is a paper called, it's a recent paper from 2024, yeah, 2024, called A Critical Review of AI in Accountancy Education. This is absolutely essential reading. Threat and opportunity. Now, so read the paper, get that paper and read it. And I'm going to just highlight little bits of the abstract, and I'm going to read them with you, and this is I'll be finished within about 30 seconds. So first of all, it recognized that there are limited literatures, limited pieces of academic writing in this specific field. Okay? But the use of AI within accounting for accounting students raises significant issues and challenges that the accounting academies, such as Chartered Accountants Ireland, need to urgently address to survive in the long term. Okay, whether you agree with that or not, I don't know, but I think it has merit. These guys call it a change-inducing crisis. Maybe a bit dramatic, maybe I wouldn't go that far, but from crisis comes opportunity. And I think, again, at the risk of being quite repetitive here, I think that this gives an opportunity to embrace these technologies that are going to be absolutely transformative. A unique opportunity for accounting academics to address the uncritical and problematic functionalist view of the discipline and the technical reductionism of accounting. There you go. Whether you agree with that again or not is up to you. So there's a call for action here. And the call for action is to embrace AI in learning and teaching practices in a way that brings about a renewed focus on the human dimension of accounting. And I am absolutely convinced of this. Accounting is something that AI can do better than we can. I'll tell you a quick story. One of my very good colleagues has an assignment that they offer to a third-year accounting class. It takes about, the students hate it. Sorry, Christine, but they hate it. It's all about, that's okay. It takes them about a week to do it, right? If you dropped it into AI, it takes 30 seconds to do it, and it does it fully correctly. That's the difference. Now, they're not allowed to do that. They need to have the skill. But that's the difference. So AI can do what accountants do very, very, very easily. Anything rules-based is dead in the water, in my view. It really is. Does this mean the accounting profession is in trouble? No, because the human element is difficult to replace. So it's a bit like medicine. Medicine is also quite rules-based. Are we going to have doctors in 10 years' time? Of course we are, because you need to have somebody sit across the room from you and look you in the eye and tell you stuff. So the focus is going to be on the human element as opposed to the number-crunching element, in my humble opinion, because it's going to be irresistible. Who's going to pay to have a lot of money to have numbers crunched that systems like this can do it for free? I don't know if anyone is going to do that. Maybe they will, but it's the human element that I think we need to focus on. So again, here's the thing for me. And I think this gives us a wonderful opportunity to seize the opportunities that now lie before us. And that's going to be my final slide, and that's going to be my call to action. Whatever you guys do, whatever it might be, I think you're right at the exciting bit of this. 6 months ago, it was too early. A year's time, it's going to be probably too late. But there is an opportunity right now, today, to really do something with this, to reconfigure the way you work, reconfigure the courses that you offer, to give students something that is irresistible, and that is something that they will want to do above everything else. So be ahead of the curve and seize the opportunity. And we all have the chance to do that right now. And I think that's probably a good place to finish, right? Stay here.
Yeah, that was brilliant. Thank you so much for that. PJ is going to take a few questions now, but just a show of hands. How many people in this room have used AI? Yeah, so you're preaching to the converted in this audience as well. In terms of, I might have missed an apology if I did. When did you actually discover AI in education, and what has been the most surprising aspect of it for you?
From day one, pretty much, because I work in Trinity in the School of Computer Science, in TU Dublin, in the School of Business Technology. And the most surprising bit of it is the ability it has to just do stuff that takes humans a long time to do. So I was thinking that when I was putting in some of this data into the systems over the summer to test them, that it might hallucinate, or it might just make up stuff, or it might give me ideas that were stupid. It's never done that. The paid tier versions of these systems actually give really accurate results and very, very, very good responses. So probably that's been a bit surprising, I think.
Any questions? We're going to have a panel discussion later on as well, so we'll tease a lot of these options out. Stand with you.
Should we expect PhD students to finish in 1 year rather than 3 or 4, given the use of AI? What's the point of using AI if it's still going to spend 4 or 5 years doing a PhD?
Yeah, great question. I think it'll still take 4 years, because we're going to be expecting more of them, and we're going to be teaching them a different level of skills. So instead of spending a long time doing transcription, doing translation, maybe, which could take months, that'll be done pretty much instantaneously, and now they can go and learn another very, very important skill. So I think the opportunity is still there to keep them for 4 years, but the level of things, the level will increase. It'll get harder, and they'll be doing more different things, I think.
But if someone offers a 2-year PhD program and somebody else is offering a 4-year PhD program at twice the price,
Yeah.
in a sense, it's going to be inevitable that people will go.
I think so, and I mean, that's the dilemma. If somebody said you can become a chartered accountant in 18 months, that would be quite attractive. But you would have to think about if it's just about being able to do the tax return, if it's just about being able to produce the financial reports, or is it something a little bit more than that? So I think it's a little bit more than that, and I think it's all of the other stuff that you get from actually being in an educational institution or being part of a professional body like Chartered Accountants Ireland that is difficult to pick up in 18 months or a year. So you can get the hardcore skills, but it's not just about the hardcore skills. I don't know if that makes sense or if that's answering your question.
In a sense, you're going back to there's something special about education and there's something special about our degree or our PhD.
I think there is, though. I think if you
Leg to stand on it.
just say that last thing again.
It's a very dangerous leg to stand on when someone is actually just, someone else can say,
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more, and I think that it will be super attractive if somebody offers a course that says, we can give you all of these skills that would have taken 4 years previously, now you're going to get them in the space of 6 months. That's going to be super attractive. But do you really want, I mean, if you go to a doctor, God forbid, right? You want somebody who's going to tell you what's wrong with you, definitely. But you also want somebody with empathy, with experience, with understanding, with maybe a broader network of people who he or she has spent a long time with in the trenches. It's about, I think it has to be about more than just skills. You can get the skills more quickly, but it takes a long time to get those softer elements that just are a part of education, I think. Again, I'm not sure if I'm answering your question. I hope I am.
No, you're responding to that. I'm sorry for taking up.
No. Thank you for that. You have another question?
Yeah. Thank you very much, PJ, because you paint a very positive and benevolent.
Sorry, I'll just stop you there for a second. Apologies. We just need the microphone. Thank you.
I'd say, PJ, thank you very much. You paint a very positive and benevolent future for AI, as distinct from some of the more dystopian stuff that I'm reading about. But you mentioned that it is possible, and I use the phrase carefully, that you can knock out research papers over the course of a weekend,
Yeah.
as distinct from the 3 to 4 months previously. And my concern is that something's going to be lost. You know, the opportunity to reflect, to interact with colleagues, to discuss problems, you know, to consider. You know, is that something that you'd have, and also the surge in research that's going to emanate from this?
Yeah.
Who's going to read it?
Nobody, probably. It's something that I think I am concerned about as well, but it's a game, it's an academic game. If you look at somebody who has done a PhD and is now probably in a postdoc and is looking for a tenured position in a university, it's gladiator school. It really is absolutely ruthless. So if you were going for an interview, the only thing that matters is H-index, and H-index is the amount of papers you've published and citations. That's all that matters. I've never been in an interview where somebody said, that paper that you wrote, you know, how did you feel about that paper? Do you think that was good research? Did somebody enjoy reading it? Because nobody cares. How many papers did you write? I wrote 20 papers. What's your H-index? It's 15. If yours is 14, I've got advantage over you. Your papers could be much better. They could be much more interesting, but I've got more. And you see, that's what's going to drive people. If you have the luxury of having a tenured position and you don't have to worry about that kind of thing, then I think you can relax a little bit more into it. But it's an academic game. It really is. In third level, it's an academic game. And I would probably go as far as to say that nobody really cares who reads their papers. It's just about getting the papers. Now, that's a little bit cynical, so forgive me for being a little bit cynical, but you have to remember it's a game. All about money, all about publishing houses, academic journals, universities. It's all a big game.
If you wouldn't mind passing the microphone back, yeah, thank you.
Just following on very quickly on that, maybe the game should change. And that AI, in fact, will change the game in the context of appointments and promotions in higher education, which already, as you described it, are extraordinarily narrow basis for appointing anybody.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think it should. But I mean, if you think about anything that's happened over the past, there's always disintermediation, which means that technology changes things. We just have to move with the times. So when is the last time any of you were in a travel agency shop? Are there even still travel agency shops? If you're booking something, you're going to book it online. So we just change, things become a little bit different. There's going to be less human interaction. There's going to be more stuff that nobody reads. But again, that's just the way it is, I suppose.
And just to follow in terms of colleges then, like we're changing then the whole idea of what education is, what actually attending colleges as well. So is there a fear with AI, or maybe a challenge, maybe fear is not the right word, a challenge, that we don't actually have people going to college anymore, that we're actually changing how we actually assess and how people interact with other people?
Yeah, we are. And I think even the way, I'm looking around the room now to try to gauge ages here. I'm very, very bad at this. But I'm from an age where you actually had to go to a bar or a disco to meet a girl, right? You had to go and meet somebody in person. I'm not sure young people actually meet people like that anymore, do they? It changes things. And we're a little bit afraid of these changes. You know, I'm always saying to my son, go out and meet people and go off for a game of football. Call in for your man there down the road. He said, nobody calls in for anyone anymore. What are you talking about? Like, you from the Stone Age or something. So it just changes the way we work and the way we think. So everything is up for change. And this is what's of interest in this particular room right now. Education is going to change, and it's going to change really, really fast. Mark my words. Think back to this exact moment in 6 months' time, because it will. The way we educate accountants, the way we give PhDs, as my friend here was saying, I'm not sure, I forget who was saying it, the way we do everything, the way Jerry runs Pat Business School, that's all going to change because students are going to want something different. The skills of maybe teaching somebody how to use Excel to a very, very high level, or how to do something rules-based to a very high level, is always going to be valuable. Always worth doing. But it's not going to be something that students want. They're going to want to know how to do that more quickly, more effectively, how to leverage existing tools. It's like, can you do long division manually?
Well, I remember how to do it, but I don't.
When was the last time you did it?
I know, you don't do it anymore.
So
No.
375,000 divided by 11.3. The first thing we're going to do is, shit, where's my phone gone? And we're going to get the calculator and we're going to do it, right? So it's a valuable skill to know how to do it. And I'm glad I'm probably not as good as you, but I could sort of struggle through it. But I'm never going to do it. So is that worth actually teaching? Now, I'm being deadly serious here. Is that worth actually teaching? Or should we just tell people where their phone is?
It's actually interesting because I have children who are going to school, and this is the same situation as well. So they're learning how to do it, but everything is done on their phone. They take out their phone and they do that, or they Google to do whatever they have to do it. Yeah. They don't actually do stuff manually anymore. So that's a really good point. Sorry, no, you have a question?
Sorry, it's more of an observation really. The question is reinforcing what PJ said. I've certainly been an early adopter of this. Really enjoyed the presentation, PJ. Look forward to working with you a little bit in the next few weeks and months as well on the course. I think it just challenges everything. I think it challenges the way we think about education, the institutions, academia. What are we trying to really do here? So I totally endorse what PJ's saying in terms of it makes us rethink everything.
Any questions on this side of the room before? One final question? Yeah, final question before we move on. We'll hold on 2 seconds just to get the microphone.
Great presentation, wonderful. Are you fearful about the future?
No, I'm very hopeful about the future. I think that this is going to be great. I think that once we have true generative AI, which we don't have yet, I think it's going to have the potential to solve huge problems that humans simply can't, like the sustainability crisis, the environmental crisis. It's a whole other conversation, and we might not like the answers that these systems tell us about things we need to do, but I think they will have the potential to change, and very, very positively change. With regard to education, again, I'm super positive because I really think that as education leaders and as people who teach and who learn and who organize courses and who do all of this kind of researchy kind of stuff, we're at an incredibly important time where we have a chance to do things that nobody else has even thought about doing. So I suppose, again, the call to action or the challenge would be exactly, I'm glad that slide is up there, is to just think about this stuff and really seize the opportunity and be brave and be disruptive. And just get out there and do it. And if it fails, let it fail. But I really do believe that students are going to want this. There's going to be a huge demand for it. And all of the professions, the way we learn things, is going to be very, very, very different to the way our kids will. So remember this. Remember that slide and go out and try to do it as best you can. And try the best way to use these systems and the best way to learn about these systems is just to start using them. So whatever you do, be it teaching or learning or organizing or whatever it might be, start using the systems. Have a look at some of the stuff that I put up there on the board. There's free tiers on all of it. You might have institutional memberships of some of it as well. And just get in and see what you think yourself. And I think that that gives us great hope. And I would be hoping that I'll be able to dictate maybe how some of this will change. And I think that that's the great hope as I see it for all of us in the room. We'll all be on top of Everest before definitely.
Be easy, no problem, no problem. I suppose some people have a fear of AI, but that there's the idea of that emotion, of that empathy, that we won't have that anymore. Just give us a sense of that. Will that change, or is it just within people ourselves that we're going to actually change and how we reciprocate and how we report to this?
I think it's changing already. I think business dictates that people are expensive. So if you want to actually talk to a real person, you have to pay for that. So I think the empathy is being pulled out of things already as I see it. It's this whole computer says no kind of attitude. And I was in Cambridge recently, Cambridge University, and Cambridge, if anyone's been there, it's absolutely beautiful. And one of the guys was saying, yeah, years ago, you could just go up to the gate of the entrance into these beautiful little squares. And the guy behind the caretaker guy, you could say to him, I just want to have a look in there quick. And he'd say, yeah, go on, have a look. But nowadays, the response you're definitely going to get is, nope, the computer says, I can't scan you in, so I definitely can't scan you in. So I think empathy is going to go. But you see, this is the bit that I think accountants can excel at. I think empathy can't be replaced by AI. And I think that the real competitive advantage we have here as accountants is the incredibly advanced skill set, like just the core knowledge and the core expertise that we have combined with human empathy. And I think that maybe that's where we're always going to win over AI, the human element.
PJ, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Really appreciate it. Thank you.